violence. The violence we face is vast and not always physical. It can be psychological, it can be structural or emotional. But the cause is simple: women's inequality.
I think it's an amazing campaign. I really love the graphics, and it's really important that we all know that any woman anywhere can suffer from violence.
It's such a massive area and spectrum, and not always the images that might come to mind at first, and that actually it's really complex.
It's very powerful, and I think it's important because it brings many people together, and it sends a message that everyone can relate to.
I think it is the tip of the iceberg. Things are starting to change on a social and political level, but there's still a lot of work to be done and a lot of people who need to get on board. I think this campaign is important and relevant because it's also shedding light on stories that we may not hear when we're talking about mainstream issues of violence.
It's the norm. All of us experience it all the time. Have equal economic or social or political power.
Yeah, we need to change everything from making sure that we have gender equal pay to that women are properly represented in politics, and we have gender-friendly nurseries.
It's no surprise that Scotland seems to be overrun these days with feminism, with Helmut Head being the UN of all things, UN scheme's first gender equality advocate, way back in February. The announcement was made during a meeting with the executive director of the UN Women. Of course, now why would the UN really put so much of the focus on gender equality and feminism when there's supposed to be more pressing matters at hand, aka their fabricated climate emergency? Stands to reason that the reason that they spend so much time and attention and finances on gender equality is because they know fine well that feminists across the West will be quite happy to lap it all up and take the Sustainable Development Goals that the UN have conjured up all on board and run with them, purely because number 5 is all about feminism. I still firmly believe that the people pushing the rhetoric in regards to gender-based violence deriving from the root cause, which is supposed to be gender inequality, I don't believe that they believe that, but yet they're quite prepared to subvert the public with that claim. They're quite prepared to use the violence against women as an excuse to tackle the so-called inequalities within society, ranging from disparities to representation, or as this woman says, something about power.
We do not have equal economic or social or political power.
Now, it's just not logical to conclude that so-called equal representation within Parliament would amount to power of any sort, unless of course they were all rabid feminists. Nonetheless, how is that in any way going to end violence against women? How is that going to end domestic violence?
Yeah, we need to change everything from making sure that we have gender equal pay to that women are properly represented in politics, and we have gender-friendly nurseries.
Gender-friendly nurseries. See, this is where it gets rather insidious, because one of the methods that these people have up their sleeves to try and eradicate the so-called prevalent issue that so many men seem to have, as they see women as subordinate citizens, according to them. They intend to go after the children. They intend to tackle stereotypes. They intend to change the attitudes of children. This is the Scotland's Gender-Friendly Nursery project. The programme is in the pilot phase, which consisted of a full-day training session for the full staff group, who indicated an interest in taking part. This was mostly undertaken on service days. However, 2 courses were delivered as twilights over 3 sessions, with the training being delivered by staff from the North East Glasgow Health Improvement Team, with support from Glasgow East's Women's Aid, of course. During the course, staff were introduced to the concept of gender and discussions around equality and equity, gender stereotypes and where they are found, their relationship to gender inequality, and the many harms this can cause. Staff were asked to reflect on their own practice by starting work on an audit highlighting their existing good practice and later on exploring areas for development, considering areas of leadership, management, staff awareness, curriculum learning and teaching environment, resources, communication with parents, carers and the wider community. 9 nurseries engaged with the process over the pilot phase, with the first 2 of these being recognised as gender-friendly nurseries. 4 other nurseries are working towards their award and 3 have not yet progressed since the training. Were asked to rate their agreement with the following statements, both prior to and following the delivery of the gender-friendly nursery training. Gender and sex mean the same thing. Gender stereotypes can lead to negative outcomes like inequality, violence and unequal resource. No matter what we do, girls will inevitably gravitate towards things like the home corner. And of course we can't be having mothers. Motherhood is forbidden. There are easy ways to implement ways to ensure gender stereotypes are reduced at nursery. Oh yes. And equality means treating everyone in the same way, and it's the best way to approach gender. It's not my job to teach children about gender, that's up to the parents. There are many benefits to having male nursery staff. Because this is what they're wanting to do. They're wanting more men in the childcare sector because it doesn't pay well. With the results showing an increased understanding of the difference between sex and gender and the negative outcomes of gender stereotyping, participants were less likely to agree that girls are inevitably drawn to the home corner and more in agreement that there are always ways that nurseries can ensure gender stereotypes are reduced. However, the results also suggest that gender-friendly nursery training needs to be clearer about the differences between equality and equity. Jesus. And what this means for work around gender, with the intention for participants to recognise that it may not always be most appropriate to treat boys and girls exactly the same when in some circumstances certain groups may need extra support for encouragement above the others, meaning girls. It should be noted here that many staff were keen during discussions to stress that nurseries took a child-centred individual approach to working with children which was not influenced by gender but by the preferences of each child. There was very little change in the statements relating to job role and male nursery staff, however this is because the pre-course views of both participants were in line with the training content. I think everything you do on this route always makes a difference because we are the first educators of the children. So it's incumbent on us to brainwash them. It's incumbent on us to empower the girls. Some of the kids are in here at 6 weeks and are here till they are 5. So when it comes to those kids, it is embedded, and I think those kids are more confident and have a better sense of self when they go to school. Our impact might seem minimal, but it's not. It's really quite. It's drip feeding what we do, and it's making a small impact, though we are hoping it's making a big impact. We're also very clear on the need to engage with parents on the topic of gender, to not only challenge their attitudes and practices around gender, but to reinforce the good work that takes place in the nursery environment. There was a commonly held acceptance among staff that although addressing gender in a nursery setting is crucial, there was only so much impact nurseries can have, as children will inevitably be influenced more by what happens at home or when they move on to primary school. Staff were generally confident in the challenging parental attitudes around gender, with the most commonly cited example being the father concerned at seeing his son in a dress or pushing a pram. Staff generally challenged parents in a friendly way, and staff felt that parents generally listened and accepted what they were saying. I've challenged a couple of parents on a couple of things, not jokingly but in a light-hearted way, with the message that we shouldn't be talking like this anymore. What right do you have to interfere within the home life of a child and parent? This is what's going on here, this constant interfering, this encroaching, interfering government. On a similar vein, a number of staff felt that they may need to look at how gender is approached in primary and secondary schools. Of course they did, how convenient. Staff felt that while nurseries can do brilliant work with their own staff, children and parents, there is a risk of any progress being undone. Where there may be an entirely different environment and approach. Nurseries recognised also that as children approach school age, there may be more pressure on parents to make sure their children conform to stricter gender stereotypes, and God forbid that they assume their boy is a boy and vice versa for a girl. Can't be doing that. It was very clear that nursery staff had a good relationship with parents, allowing them to challenge these attitudes safely and suggest a legitimate role for nurseries in engaging with parents around this topic. Staff felt that gender-friendly nursery training provided them with additional knowledge to support these conversations with parents and explain why they practice the way they do. Staff were also very mindful of the impact that culture, ethnicity, religion and social demographics can play in some of the attitudes of parents. Of course, incorporate intersectionality into the environment of a nursery school child. And so we're able to be sensitive in the responses, with nurseries nurseries felt that there was potential for them to engage more formally with parents on the topic of gender if suitable materials were available. And again, you have no place to be discussing any of these matters with parents. Actions taken and changes made among the nurseries who contribute to the evaluation included adding gender-friendly nurseries to the improvement plan. This was felt to be vital in order to keep the nursery on track towards the award and keep gender-friendly nurseries on the agenda, being the operative word. Development of a specific gender policy. While nurseries had general equality policies in place, a policy specific to gender allowed them to be more specific about issues and work around this topic. Further training and reflection, with several nurseries offering catch-up sessions or twilights to staff who had been unable to attend the initial training. One nursery had staff sessions to work through the audit process, while others had delegated this to a specific member or group. Small changes. Most nurseries and staff were able to describe a number of small changes which had taken place. Very often these were changes to usual practice in the nursery. For example, no longer buying gender-specific birthday cards or gifts. Oh, for fuck's sake! No longer dividing the children by gender for specific nursery activities, or having a mum's race and a dad's race at sports day, and letting children choose the gender and clothing of take-home Ted on their turn to take it home. What are you doing? Staff described auditing the resources and display within the nursery and making changes and new purchases in order to make them more open-ended and gender-friendly. For example, adding books which show children of different genders and different roles, books which show different types of families, and removing books which may reinforce gender stereotypes. See, I don't get this. For example, when they say books that may reinforce gender stereotypes, so they remove all of them, but then they will replace them with books that will display opposite, stereotypically opposite stereotypes. So instead of a woman in the kitchen, it'll be a woman in the garden, cutting the grass or something. And it'll be a man in the kitchen, cooking. And it'll be a man that's a plumber. It'll be a girl that's a plumber, or a woman that's a plumber, sorry. I mean, surely you would have several books that, quote-unquote, reinforce gender stereotypes, as well as opposing books. A bit of each. But they systematically remove everything that could potentially even signal or hint or allude to traditionalism. Communicating with parents. Parents have been informed about the gender-friendly nursery programme in a number of ways. Staff also reported feeling confident about challenging the views of parents. And again, I mean, who the hell do you think you are? I changed at least one parent's idea about their child crying, helping the parent understand that children need to express their emotions and help them to talk about how they feel. One father was not happy when there was a picture of his son playing with a buggy. I approached this by reminding him this would make him a better father one day, and asked, "Did you push your son in the pram?" Okay. A member of staff described how she looked after a boy who often liked to wear dresses from the dressing up corner, but whose dad was likely to be uncomfortable about this, and I wonder why that might be. Even though I am a gender-friendly champion, this is everything I believe in, of course it is. It's not that it's offensive, it's just that when you are speaking, you are using language that you normally use. It's about taking that step back and thinking of what you are saying, why you're saying it, and how you're saying it, and what effects this has on your children. And that's the main thing, and the positive outcome for your children. The nurseries are being targeted, the primary schools are being targeted, the high schools are being targeted, the unis are blatantly being targeted. Every aspect of society is being deconstructed and recreated in the image of the rabid feminists like Helmet Head, all courtesy of the United Nations.